Chapter 5, Sri Lanka, 1989-1990. A student once asked Sayadaw if he'd traveled to Sri Lanka to learn more about Abhidhamma. Sayadaw replied that he hadn't, as the Abhidhamma education in Myanmar is of the very highest quality. There's no need to go somewhere else to learn it. The children of Myanmar, including lay children, not just monks and novices, start learning it at a young age. No, we mostly go to Sri Lanka or Thailand to teach it. But, he explained, he'd gone to Sri Lanka for postgraduate studies of Pali and Buddhism in general. And, although he'd already studied these topics in his home country, he'd traveled to Sri Lanka specifically to learn them in English. I studied English at Aquinas College of Higher Studies, which was a very famous college in Colombo. It was the only college in Sri Lanka that offered an English program. I was able to study English grammar there. I was also accepted at the Postgraduate Institute of Pali and Buddhist Studies in Kohuala, where classes were held in a 2-story building. This was a part of the University of Kelaniya, though it was on a different campus. Sayadaw's teachers for his postgraduate studies were Chinese, Japanese, and Sri Lankan. They'd mostly graduated from university in Russia, where they'd studied Buddhism. But the students generally knew the subject matter better than the teachers, though their articulation was usually limited to their native tongues. Although the instructors asked basic questions that Sayadaw could have easily answered in Burmese, it was a difficult challenge learning how to respond in his still limited English. I was accepted at the Postgraduate Institute because I had already finished my Buddhist education in Burma. I'd received my Dhammakarya degree, and I wanted to pursue a master's degree. They were offering MA degrees to Burmese monks who already had their Dhammakarya degrees. 89 Las Vegas Sayadaw, visiting Jaya Shri Maha Bodhi at Mahamona Gardens. Jaya Shri Maha Bodhi is from a southern branch of the original Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, under which the Buddha attained enlightenment. The tree was planted in 288 BCC. It is the world's closest authentic living link to the Buddha. Anuradhapura, Sri Lanka, 1989. Sayadaw also studied Sinhalese every day and eventually got to a point where he could read, write, and speak the Sri Lankan language. Sayadaw would reflect decades later that after leaving Sri Lanka, he'd stopped practicing the language. Although he could still understand Sinhalese, his monastic duties had kept him too busy over the decades to continue studying and remain fluent in the language. He added that he didn't even have time to speak his native tongue with his fellow Palang monks at Chaya Meditation Monastery. Saliva Soup Sayadaw was telling a young student about the importance of speaking rightly. According to the Buddha, our speech should be true, beneficial, and conducted at the right time. As such, Sayadaw wishes for visitors to the monastery to speak only when it is necessary. He admonishes overnight guests to refrain from talking altogether. We have a rule here. While the monks, the nuns, and the 8 precept retreatants are having lunch, all the day visitors do the morning chanting, then sit in meditation until we are done. 90 Sri Lanka, 1989-1990. When we're done, I offer them a quick Dhamma talk, and then they go have their lunch. But it doesn't always work out that way. While we're eating lunch, some of the lay people are just talking. And what happens is that you'll have some people sitting in meditation while others around them are talking. It's very ugly. Sayadaw added that this is very dangerous too, for it destroys the meditator's concentration. I don't get mad. I'm the teacher, and it's my duty to teach, to remind, and to admonish them. But they just talk about food, politics, clothes, vain talk. Someone once asked him what he thought of the newly elected president. I have no idea. It's not my duty to be concerned with it. And when he was asked what political party he preferred, Sayadaw responded, It doesn't matter who. I just wish for us to have a good president. The vain talk sometimes bleeds over into the meal area too. People are talking while they're eating, and their saliva ends up on someone else's lunch. So I had to put up a sign that said, Don't allow your saliva to be someone's soup. Sayadaw explained that these admonitions are for the benefit of the people. Most people trust the outside world, but they forget the inner world. We need to improve our inner world to gain peace and happiness. 91 Las Vegas Sayadaw, in front of Sri Pada, a holy mountain in southern Sri Lanka. The mountain is revered for a rock formation near the summit that some believe to be the left footprint of the Buddha, left behind when he visited Sri Lanka. While studying in Sri Lanka, Sayadaw received word from home that a younger sister had died in Myanmar. The rigors of his daily study schedule and an unstable local political climate didn't allow much time for reflection on his siblings' passing. Unfortunately, I had just 1 year of studies before the JVP crisis really flared up again. JVP, Janatha Vimukti Peramuna, was a political movement in Sri Lanka that was involved in 2 armed uprisings against the government. The first uprising was in 1971, while the second uprising occurred from 1987 to 1989. The JVPs were communists from Moscow. There was constant fighting and people were being killed every day. There were curfews too, and because of the curfews the days became shorter and shorter. We couldn't go anywhere. I just stayed at the temple. The crisis eliminated any real opportunities to study for about the next 6 months. It was very difficult at that time. 92 Sri Lanka, 1989-1990. Sayadaw decided to leave Sri Lanka. In mid-1990, I was talking one day with my old teacher in New Delhi. He said to me, "Do you want to go to Australia? They need a monk at a monastery there. I'll give you the phone number to contact them." I considered this opportunity. There was a doctor from Sydney that I'd met while I'd been in Sri Lanka, and he said to me, "It's the right time to go because the situation in Sri Lanka is not good." So I decided I might go to Australia. In the midst of all the instability in Sri Lanka and at home in Myanmar, the 43-year-old Sayadaw also experienced something of an existential crisis during his time in Sri Lanka. There'd come a moment when he'd questioned whether all the years of study had been the best use of his time. He'd thought, "Why don't I practice as much or more than I study?" He'd sometimes reflect on his years of intensive summer meditation retreats in Burma, back before he'd started teaching, and how beneficial those experiences had been for him. He longed for an opportunity for deep seclusion and a long-term retreat in the jungle. But then the uncertainty of life presented yet another unexpected direction for Sayadaw. A change of plans during his year of study in Sri Lanka. Sayadaw had become friendly with a Thai monk named Ajahn Narong, with whom he'd attended classes at Kelaniya University. Ajahn Narong was from a monastery near Bangkok, where there had been an elderly monk who had ordained later in life after a career in government. The elderly monk's name was Ajahn Panyavaro. Ajahn Panyavaro, who despite his 80 years of age had only been in robes for 10 vasa, had been given an opportunity to travel to the United States to establish a new Thai temple there. With a plan for it to be established in the Las Vegas area, the temple was to be the first Buddhist temple in Nevada. 93 Las Vegas Sayadaw Ajahn Panyavaro was a good fit for the job, given that his previous career had made him adept at dealing with people from different countries and across cultures. In mid-1990, Ajahn Panyavaro invited Ajahn Narong to join him at the new monastery in Las Vegas. The English that Ajahn Narong had picked up while studying in Sri Lanka would be an asset in America. After Ajahn Narong had settled in the United States, Ajahn Panyavaro commented to him one day that he'd also like to find and invite a monk with a strong meditation background to come and teach meditation. Ajahn Narong told the elderly abbot about Sayadaw and suggested that he be the monk they invite. Ajahn Panyavaro thought this was a good idea and encouraged him to contact Sayadaw. Then my plans changed. Instead of Australia, where I didn't know any monks or even lay people, I decided to go to America. There, I had my friend, Ajahn Narong, who knew me well. I knew him well, too. In late 1990, Sayadaw received formal invitation from Venerable Ajahn Panyavaro, abbot of Wat Buddha Bhavana in Las Vegas, Nevada, to travel to the United States to teach meditation at his new monastery. Sayadaw formally accepted. I went to the U.S. Embassy in Colombo and told them I wanted to go to America. They told me, "We can't give you a visa here. You have to return to your own country to get a visa." Sayadaw explained to them that the political situation in Myanmar was not good. I told them that if I went back I might not be allowed to leave again. So I said, if possible, please give me a tourist visa. The person said, wait a minute. He went off to talk to his supervisor. He returned a few minutes later with my visa. It was that easy. 94 Sri Lanka, 1989-1990. Ajahn Narang had recently called Sayadaw and said that if he could get a visa, he'd send an airline ticket for him. When I told him I'd gotten the visa, he told me that I could pick up the ticket at the Dusit Thani Hotel in Bangkok. So I left Colombo and returned to Thailand to retrieve the ticket. Returned to Thailand, Sayadaw had not been complacent during his last weeks in Sri Lanka. He'd continued to study as best he was able, given the limitations the JVP had placed on life there. He wanted to take full advantage of the educational opportunities the country could afford him. Because I'd studied so hard, I got sick. I couldn't eat for a few weeks. When I arrived in Thailand, I picked up my Korean Airlines ticket, then went to a very big Bangkok temple called Wat Bung Sankhe. There were actually 2 temples there, one inside the compound and one outside. The abbot of the inside temple, whom I called Luang Por Bung Sankhe Nai, Nai is a Thai word meaning inside, was a very nice monk whom I'd met while he was on pilgrimage in Colombo. He'd been in Colombo for about a week and stayed at the temple where I'd been living. We'd gotten along very well. It turned out that Luang Por Bung Sankhe Nai was very famous in Thailand, and he was a vegetarian like me. He let me stay with him for 3 weeks in his building at Wat Bung Sankhe while I recovered from my illness. Sayadaw didn't go anywhere and just stayed put in the monastery as he slowly regained his strength. I just tried to rest and recover. But I did spend some of that free time teaching Luang Por Bung Sankhe Nai some of the English I'd learned in Sri Lanka. 95 Las Vegas. Sayadaw gradually began to improve as the monastery residents went about their usual routines. Every day Luang Por and about 5 or 10 of the monks would get invited out for breakfast and lunch. Whenever they did, the people would donate a lot of money to them, maybe 500 or 1,000 baht. Luang Por Bung Sankhe Nai was very kind. He gave me all the donations he'd received during the 3 weeks I was there. He said to me, "This is for your education in America." He gave me over $2,000. Soon Sayadaw was on a flight to America. The day I arrived at Wat Buddha Bhavana, I paid back Ajahn Narang for the airline ticket he'd sent me. As it turned out, Ajahn Narang would later disrobe and settle in Las Vegas as a layperson, and the kind abbot who gave me all that money eventually died too. Those with wisdom would know better. Once, while speaking with a student about the nature of having an improper view of reality, Sayadaw shared a story about an occasion when he'd been invited to another state to speak before a group of doctors. For each of the group's monthly meetings, they'd invite a monk to give a Dhamma talk and answer their questions. As that month's monastic guest, Sayadaw gave the group a 1-hour Dhamma talk, then answered their questions for another 2 hours. Although the doctors were well-educated people, most of them had refused to believe his teachings on heaven and hell realms, or past and future lives. Later that evening, a man and a woman who'd been at the talk sat for a while with Sayadaw. As they talked, they told him that this group of doctors asked those same questions of most of the monks who gave talks to them each month, yet they still refused to accept the truth of the teachings. 96 Sri Lanka, 1989-1990. Sayadaw commented to his student that the doctors could not accept his teaching because of their strong attachment to their own views. Even the Buddha couldn't help them. In a similar vein, Sayadaw spoke of a doctor who'd given him free care for 10 years. He was a very nice man. The doctor would sometimes tell Sayadaw of his fishing vacations in Alaska or his hunting trips to Utah. See? The doctor was an educated man, but didn't have the wisdom to know that hunting was bad karma. Someone with wisdom would know better. 97.